Good evening. I'll call to order the Board of Health meeting for Wednesday, April 6th of 2022 at 6 p.m. First on our agenda this evening, we have a hearing for 59 Quobog Avenue. So at this time, I will open up the public hearing for 59 Quobog Avenue by reading in the hearing notice. So please be advised that the Oxford Board of Health received your appeal date, March 14th of 2022, of the order to correct, dated March 2nd of 2022, regarding the property located at 59 Quobog Avenue, Oxford, Massachusetts. The Oxford Board of Health will conduct a public hearing to review the order to correct on Wednesday, April 6th of 2022 at 6 p.m. at the Oxford Community Center Community Meeting Room on the main level. This hearing is being held pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 111, Sections 30 and 122, and 105 CMR 400, etc., for the purpose of determining whether the Director of Public Health Services, finding that the conditions at the property constitute violations of the state sanitary code and a public nuisance and cause of sickness within the town of Oxford, and whether the order to correct should be affirmed. At the conclusion of the meeting, the board may affirm, vacate, or modify the order to correct. You are invited to participate in the hearing and be represented by counsel at your own expense if you wish. At this time, you may produce any documentation and/or witnesses which show that the order to correct should be modified or vacated. You have the right to inspect and copy the Board of Health's file concerning the matter being heard. Please be advised that this notice of hearing does not operate as a stay of enforcement of the order to correct, and that the order to correct remains in full force and effect unless and until it is modified or vacated by the board. Should you have any questions, we can be reached at 508-987-6045, extension 1034. And as a matter of, for the record, this meeting is also being recorded. So at this time, I will turn it over to legal counsel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. We're here today for the public hearing. I'm just going to set some ground rules for everyone. So testimony today will be limited only to the issues directly related to the subject matter of this hearing. Only one person will be permitted to speak at a time. All discussion should go through Madam Chair. All parties will be expected to conduct themselves civilly. Arguments between parties will not be permitted. Witnesses will be sworn in and asked to identify themselves by stating their names and addresses for the record. Witnesses may be questioned by members of the board and may be cross-examined by the property owners or their representative. At this time, anyone who's going to give testimony as a witness, please stand. Raise your right hand and swear that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to take some evidence from the Director of Public Health Services.
Hi, good evening. So as you can see,
If I may, can you state your name for the record?
My name is Rika Starrett, and I'm the Director of Public Health Services.
Okay. Are you familiar with the state sanitary code?
Yes.
Okay. How are you familiar with it?
I have been conducting housing inspections under the state sanitary code for the past 7 years.
Okay. Are you familiar with the property at 59 Quabog Avenue?
I am.
How are you familiar with it?
I was asked to go out to do an inspection on February 10th, and that was the first time I had visually seen the property, but upon being hired, I had been given a little bit of a background regarding the property.
I'm going to show you a inspection order dated April 2nd of 2021. Is there someone who can hand this to the property owners, please? Thank you. Are you familiar with this inspection order?
Yes, I have read it.
Okay. Did you yourself issue this order?
I did not.
Okay, who issued this order?
The previous health agent, Allison Novak.
And to your understanding, did this order cite violations of the state sanitary code?
Yes.
Okay, and did it ask the property owners to correct those violations?
Yes, it did.
Okay. I'd like to mark this as Exhibit 1 for the record. Were you able to re-inspect the property to see whether the violations in this April 2nd, 2021 order had been corrected?
Yes, on February 10th.
Going to show you some photos for the property owners. Thank you. Are these true and accurate photos? Are these true and accurate photos that you had taken when you went out to the property to inspect on February 10th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What, if anything, do these photos show?
So these photos, there's a few electrical photos there that show multiple extension cords that they've run and electrical work that they've put in. It shows containers filled with various insects. One of the photos does show a blocked basement egress. And so most of the electrical all the electrical photos are either from the garage or the basement.
Okay. And exactly what do the electrical photos show? Are they plugged into extension cords? Are they in the ceiling?
Yep, extension cords, multiple power strips, some outlets in the ceilings that had been installed, extension cords run. There is one photo where an outlet cover is missing,
Okay.
but that's very minor. The major issues were the number of electrical outlets that had been installed and extension cords and strips.
Okay. Were there any hanging wires that you observed coming from the electrical cords?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, like you had some from the ceiling. I mean, they were, for a lot of the, like they had some order to them. If that makes sense.
Okay. Aside from the wires that you observed, did you observe any defects in the structure itself, in the walls?
Yeah, so there was one area in the entryway where there's a photo. It's more towards the back, where there had been a panel that is opening. Do you mind if I, Madam Chair, I pause this? I believe the Vice Chair needs to be let back into the meeting.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Apologize for the interruption.
Of course. Madam Chair, I'd like to mark this as Exhibit 2 for the record. Okay. After observing these violations, did you issue an order to correct?
I did.
Okay. Is this a true copy of your order to correct? For the property owners.
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you note in your order to correct dated February 16, 2022?
So as you'd mentioned, in that front entryway, a wall panel there is missing, and then the electrical wiring overloading the system, and then the basement door, the egress was blocked, and then I had cited a nuisance due to the number of pests that were in the residence, or insects, I should say, that were in the residence in a residential area, and then the odor that was observed in the property.
Okay. And for each of the violations that you observed, did you cite to the relevant provision of the state sanitary code that you believed was applicable?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that you had cited the property owners for a nuisance. Was that relative to nuisance odors that you observed, as well as the number of insects that you found at the property?
Yes.
Okay. And With respect to the insects that were found in the property, my understanding is that they were in bins, is that correct?
Correct.
Were all of those bins covered?
No.
And was that part of the basis for your citing them for a nuisance violation?
Correct.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'd like to mark this as Exhibit 3 for the record.
Okay. Can I actually, I'm just looking at this one more time, and the date is incorrect. The date that was actually sent out was March 2nd, 2022. That appears to be the only difference in the order letters, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, just the date at the top, and then the certified mail number.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the corrected one?
I do, I have mine here.
Okay, Madam Chair, actually, can we switch, we'll switch
And
that.
the board should have it as well in their packet.
March 2nd?
Yes, can we mark that one as Exhibit 3? Yep.
Do you want to grab Dave's folder? Because we do have an extra one. from-
Yes.
Okay, then, do you want to just give this to the, thank you.
And so the March 3rd order was the one that was provided to the property owners, correct?
Correct. It was March, is it?
March 2nd.
March 2nd, my apologies. Okay. Have the property owners contacted you about curing within the timeframes that you ordered?
They sent an appeal letter on the 14th, and they did provide documentation that the egress has been cleared and that that item has been corrected. And that is the only contact.
Is this a copy of the appeal that you received? Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'm going to mark this as Exhibit 4 for the record.
Okay.
Now, to your, in your opinion, has the violation with respect to the egress been cured?
Yes.
Okay, and you said that you were provided a photo showing that?
Correct.
Okay.
And the board has been provided a photo of that as well.
Okay. And in the appeal that you received, did the property owners request additional time to fix the open wall?
They noted that they were uncertain what they could do regarding that because the building department had put a stop work order on it.
Okay. And had they also asked for additional time to fix the wall?
They had stated that it would be corrected once they had gotten building department approval.
Okay. Have you received any notification from the building department or from the property owners that any steps have been taken to fix the wall or to get the necessary approvals to do any work to fix the wall?
I have not. I have spoken to the building department, and they are correct. The building department has put a cease and desist because they need to conduct an inspection of the work that was done. So nothing should be closed up at this time. But whether anything has been done to move that forward, it has not. I've not been made aware of it.
Okay. How about the outlet covers?
I have been, the amended appeal noted that they had been corrected. I believe their legal had noted there would be pictures provided. We have not received documentation of that, but I'm sure that they have been corrected, the
Okay.
outlet covers. And I'm sure that they can provide that easily.
So to clarify your testimony, you would accept a photo from them to show
the
that
outlet
that has
covers,
been
yes.
corrected?
Correct.
Okay. With respect to the electrical outlets, the property owners have claimed that those outlets are not overloaded and that the extension cords may be used. In your opinion, with respect to your knowledge of the state sanitary code, can all of those electrical cords be used at the property for their current purposes?
So at this time, usually when I conduct housing inspections, I bring the electrical inspector because they are the expert in that. And so based on my communication with the electrical inspector, I have no documentation saying that part of the property has been outfitted to hold that type of electrical setup.
Okay. And what, if anything, does the state sanitary code say with respect to use of extension cords?
So they're considered temporary wiring and shall not be used. Do you want me to quote the
Sure.
housing code? Temporary wiring, it's 410-256. No wiring shall lie under a rug or other floor covering, nor shall any extend through a doorway or other opening in a structural element. No temporary wiring shall be used or made available for use by any owner or occupant, provided that extension cords which connect portable electric appliances or fixtures to convenience outlets shall not be considered temporary wiring. And in this case, the extent and the number that they have, and it's just not one electrical appliance, it's multiple lamps and heating fixtures that they are using extension cords.
So in your opinion, as your capacity as the Director of Public Health, you believe that this is not temporary wiring?
I believe they are having temporary wiring.
Thank you. And with respect to your nuisance finding,
Yes.
when you were at the property, the property owners are claiming there was no nuisance. When you were at the property, did you observe nuisance odors?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about those odors?
So as soon as you step in, you can smell an odor. I do understand that they are dealing with reptiles, and so you can tell that there are multiple animals, large quantities of animals in that property based on the odor. And it's strongest in the garage, which is where their business is operated out of, but it is also throughout the rest of the home.
Okay. And with respect to the bins of insects that they have to feed the dragons, why did you believe that that was a nuisance? Can you tell us again?
So there was a few containers of crickets that were uncovered, and then they have a large number of containers of cockroaches. It's a large quantity of insects that can become pests, and it's in a residential neighborhood. So my concern is if something were to happen, that this could spread.
Okay. And in your opinion, would that be a detriment to the public health and safety?
Yes, in that neighborhood.
Okay. Is the inspector of wires here?
He was unable to attend.
Okay.
But we have his letter that's dated March 10th, 2022.
Okay. I'm going to show you his first order to correct. Give you both to save you. His first order to correct dated April 2nd, 2021. Can you review that?
Yes, so at the time, this was prior to me being the health agent here in Oxford, and the previous health agent had done the inspection, as did the electrical inspector at the time, and I believe the building commissioner as well. And so this lists the electrical code violations that the electrical inspector found at the time. And I believe that, speaking with the electrical inspector, that a permit had been pulled for some work for upgrading some of the electrical, but it was never inspected.
Okay. I'd like to mark this, Madam Chair, as the next exhibit, Exhibit 5. Going to show you another order, the order from March 10. Are you familiar with that order?
Yes.
Okay. And what, if anything, do you believe that this order states?
It states that, thank you, that the outstanding violations that the electrical inspector cited in April 2021 still exist, and it also speaks to my violations as a qualified licensed electrician shall confirm that the connected load on each cord set multi-outlet strip is not exceeding its rating. And then there's a few other items pretty much stating that the work needs to be inspected to confirm that it is capable for everything that's connected to it.
Okay, and again, to your knowledge, this order dated March 10, 2022, was that issued after the wiring inspector had gone on the inspection with you on February 10?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And after you received the appeal, did you send, just one more. Should be the last one, thank you. Did you send the property owners the notice of hearing?
I did.
Okay, and can you review this document?
Yes, so we received their appeal, and so I met with the chair of the board to decide on a meeting time and date to have this hearing. And it was sent via certified mail and regular mail. I believe I got the green card back saying that they received it, but they also are in attendance at the right location, so I will assume that they did get it.
Perfect. Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce this as the last exhibit, Exhibit 6.
That would be Exhibit 7.
Oh, 7? Sorry.
Just making sure.
Perfect, thank you. So at this time, I have no questions for you. The property owners, if they'd like, may cross-examine you. I would ask that one person ask all of your questions first. Once you've finished, if the other would like to ask questions, you can do so, but if you could refrain from asking questions back and forth, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll be able to do that. But that's what we're gonna
We'll make our
ask
best
questions as we
effort.
need to.
This is the health agent, Rika Sterrett, is that appropriate?
I'm sorry,
how do you-
I can't hear you.
Can you move the microphone closer to you?
Can you hear me better now?
No, is the microphone on?
No, he's not
Apparently,
gonna be able to hear
you can't hear us.
Can we move, do you care if we put him up there with you?
We're fine with it.
Okay.
Is that right? Okay.
Bringing him up. We're bringing you forward, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear us better now? Can you hear us better now?
Yeah, much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, but I can hear you.
Okay. Rika Sterrett, how do you identify what is an extension cord?
So an extension cord is, as you can see in the images, running along the floor. You have some behind the bearded dragon.
In the interest of time, I'm
Yep.
not trying to be rude, but are you familiar with UL listing codes?
Yes, not that, like, I usually defer to my electrical inspector for all the electrical items, and that's why before I sent my order letter, I confer with the electrical inspector because he is the expert.
So would you say it's accurate that the electrical inspector inspected those and confirmed that their UL codes were for extension cords?
He did mention to me that the listings seem to be appropriate, but that he has nothing certifying that everything was connected properly.
Did he mention that to you in writing?
I have his order letter.
I don't believe that his order letter actually makes a statement to that effect, does it?
It
sorry, give me
says a
just a
qualified
moment.
licensed electrician shall confirm that the connected load on each cord set multi-outlet strip is not exceeding its rating.
Yes. Do you understand what the difference is between a multi-outlet strip and an extension cord?
Yes.
Okay, so you
But a
understand
lot of
that,
the electrical cords, correct, are attached to those, are plugged into those.
those aren't extension cords, those are loads.
And even in the basement, in the,
Yes.
what I had viewed in the basement is you have extension cords running, plugged into some of those strips.
No, those are load cords. I'm not familiar with any extension cords.
So you're saying then that the multi-outlet strips, you're saying, are themselves plugged into an extension cord that is then plugged into an outlet?
You have two different items going on. You had electrical cords at different extension cords at various locations. And then those were mainly observed in the basement. And then in the garage, you have those strips where everything is plugged into. And that's where I cited the overload.
Could
right?
you-
Was
would
That
it-
didn't answer the question.
Could I, may I?
Okay.
Could you point in a picture to what specifically you believe in is an extension cord? May I approach town
Yes.
council so that I can observe?
We can do by page numbers.
Okay.
Picture number 5.
Do you have the number?
It's page
It's
number
page
5.
five.
So if you flip through it, it'll be page 5.
Is this the photo that you're speaking of?
It's this one from the basement.
Yeah, that's not an extension cord. That's a multi-tap. I believe they have 14-foot cords.
15 feet?
15-foot cords.
I would still consider that temporary wiring.
It's a multi-tap. A multi-tap is a power strip. It's not temporary wiring.
So at this point, it's just cross-examining. You'll have an opportunity to testify, but I'd ask that you only limit this to questions.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, just to
That's right.
follow up,
Yeah.
just to confirm that one cord is the only cord that you believe is an extension cord?
That is one of the images. Let's see. Are there any other specific images that I can refer to? That other image, and like I said, the one you had pointed to previously, I think it's number 6, you can see the cords that are running down below it. And then the picture after that, in the basement, you can see multiple cords running here up that are plugged in.
I see 2 cords that are plugged into 2 receptacle outlets.
That is correct.
And you believe that those are extension cords?
Yes, those are some of the ones that I viewed running throughout the basement.
Do you believe that an extension cord is a single wire that connects to a receptacle and then directly to one load?
Yes, I would, generally speaking, I would use that as general terms for, that would be one type that I would refer to as electrical cords. And depending on the number that I see and what is being plugged in, I would consider that temporary wiring.
So you believe that temporary wiring is defined by how many things are plugged into it?
I would say it's defined by the length it goes and what items are plugged in and into what. Because I understand like a refrigerator or an appliance, right, depending on the length of the cord to get it into the proper outlet, right, sometimes you need extension cords for that.
And you believe that that would be allowed?
Yes.
Now, in this picture, it doesn't actually show, I don't believe that any of these show a single wire plugged from a receptacle into a single load. Is that accurate? Are there any pictures that depict that?
No, you don't get the whole cord running in any of the pictures.
Not in any of all of these pictures? There's not a single one?
Not in these ones that I have taken. I don't know about the ones that are in our office from other departments.
There were only 2 departments that toured that day, correct?
3. Well, if you count building and as electrical and zoning as one, then they would be 1, fire and health, so that would be 3.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Town Council, I don't recall exactly the exhibit numbers, but here I have the order that we were given that day from Health. If you could-
The inspection report was,
Yes,
that was
yes.
not entered as an exhibit. If you'd like to do so, you certainly can yourself.
I'd like to enter that as whatever the next exhibit number is.
I have copies, actually.
And the board does as well.
So just to be clear that we're talking about the same, sorry.
Town council, do you need to see the documents so you can verify? I know we're kind of sitting
I
across
mean,
the room.
you can tell me if that's the same document that you have there.
It's not.
Okay, so can I see the document
Well,
that
I
you?
may have just put the pages in the wrong.
No, that's typed. Or is it in the
No,
last? Yeah, that's a
that would be,
different
the
document.
third page is the handwritten one of that. It's a
Ah, okay.
three-page document.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Yes, that's the same document.
Same document, okay. So Madam Chair, if we could mark this as the next exhibit, so Exhibit 8. That's what I have in orders. Okay.
Health Agent Rika Sterrett,
Yes.
did you observe any smoke alarms while you were in the property?
So initially, I did not, but I was also, it was decided that I would not necessarily be looking specifically or asking about smoke detectors, as we did not want to test them twice.
So can you explain why they were written in this handwritten report and then lined out?
Yep, because I had seen one removed, and so I hadn't seen any others. And then before I was going to write my inspection report, I was going to check with fire, because again, I defer to the experts. And they had noted that you actually have high standard, a new type of smoke and CO detector. And so I didn't want to cite you on something that was not a violation.
When you say that one was removed, do you recall the location that one was removed?
Yes. It was outside, I believe, the office area on the first floor. And so that was the one that I had seen removed, but you have upgraded the smoke and CO detectors. And I spoke with fire, and my understanding is there's no violation regarding the smoke or CO.
Are you familiar with what the requirements are for the locations for fire alarms?
The CO needs to be 10 feet from the bedroom, and then the smoke needs to be within a certain distance from a kitchen.
Did you believe that that was a required location for a smoke alarm?
No, but I had seen one removed. Well, that would have been if those had been bedrooms. It would have need to be a dual smoke and CO. But again, I didn't go further for that because I had been informed that fire would be checking on the smoke and CO detectors, and rather than testing them twice, I let them review that part of the inspection.
So did you enter those two rooms?
Yes, I did.
Did either of them appear to be bedrooms to you?
No, they did not.
Can you speak to why you wrote it down as a violation if they weren't bedrooms and that wouldn't be a required location?
Because as I stated, I didn't view any at that time, and so again, before I wrote them as a violation in your actual written order letter, I was going to confirm with fire because they were going to be the ones to check it. So it's actually not listed as a violation. There was no issues with your smoke or your CO detectors.
I don't understand why you wrote it down as a violation in the first place, because you seem to agree that that's not a required location. You haven't stated another location that one was not.
At this point, the question has been asked and answered. The health director testified that she had checked that box when she saw that one was removed. She crossed that out and struck it, noting that it was not a violation when she was able to further confirm that there was no violation. You have not been cited for a violation
Excuse me,
from the Board of
Are
Health.
you testifying right now?
As I am town council. You have not been cited
So
for
you're-
that.
Let her finish.
Town council doesn't
I'm
normally.
going to ask you to be
testify.
respectful
I am being respectful.
and let me finish, and then I'll give you an
Well, it sounds
opportunity
like
as
you're
well.
testifying. It doesn't sound like you're providing counsel.
So because your question has been asked and answered, I'm going to ask you to move on to your next question.
Okay.
Thank you.
At what time did you make this correction to the handwritten report?
Prior to coming by the property, I knew fire was going to be there after me, so I was trying to time it where either they would be gone and I could give them a quick call to double check, and it happened that they were there, so I was able to remove it.
I don't think this is
Oh.
working anymore.
I'm sorry, could you continue? I apologize.
No, it's
I don't
okay. If we
think
could
there's
just pause for
anything
1
to that.
second until
Okay.
we get this.
I think we're having the Wi-Fi issue.
we're struggling, we have quorum with 2. So I'd rather not spend a lot of time trying to get it up if we can't.
Okay. Okay, we're back. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, the connection dropped there.
And if he does drop, I think
All right,
we just
can you
need to
hear
wait
us
the
all right?
time that he's gone.
Dave? Can you-
Yes. Yes, I keep, yeah, hold on a second, am I muted? No.
Nope, we
Nope,
hear
Can
you.
hear me?
Yep. I'm sorry, Agent Ricastera, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, do you mind?
No, not at all. The question was when you made this correction to the report.
Oh, I made it right before handing it to you.
Was that on the original?
Yes,
So you gave us the original copy?
I believe so. I can't remember if you got the original, but all copies, it was stricken from.
Yeah.
Ms. Starrett, you referred earlier to the April 2nd, 2021 order.
Yes. Just get it in front of me.
Are you aware of any response being provided to that order?
I was after you sent your amended appeal.
Okay, so when you performed your inspection, you were not at that time aware?
That you had made an appeal?
Yes.
Correct.
Have you-
I only received, like, I went through our files, we didn't have that appeal saved anywhere. I received it with your amended appeal.
Okay. Have you reviewed that appeal at this time?
I have.
Okay. During the inspection, were you asked to provide a copy of the report?
Yes.
And did you provide a copy at that time?
No, I also didn't have it written at that time. So I had made some notes, but I hadn't written it out fully. And again,
Okay.
generally, when it's something like this, all departments, and it's a comprehensive, and I know electrical and fire is gonna be there, I like to make sure that, what I'm viewing as a violation in regards to electrical or fire, that the experts, agree.
So if I understand you correctly, while you were doing the inspection, you were taking notes, but you weren't filling out the report?
Correct, I didn't have it fully filled out. As you can see, it's a 3-page form. Normally, you're supposed to go where the violation is served, choose it. And depending on the situation, if you had asked for it, I could have completed it there. But both councils agreed that I could finish the notes back in the office and make you a copy, because this does not have a carbon copy, unfortunately.
Okay. Are you aware of what the regulation states in terms of providing a copy of the report?
Yes, the code that you cited, yes.
What does it state? If you could just tell us.
That if requested, the person requesting the inspection can ask for a copy of the inspection report in the field. And some towns, you have carbon copy for the inspection report, some are now electronic, so it can be emailed.
And what does it state if that request is made?
That the report should be given.
That it should be given, or does it need to be given?
That's a good question, actually. I don't know if it shall or should. I can pull it up, though. Unless you have the verbiage already right in front of you and you can read it to us. So a verbal or written summary of the condition noted during the inspection shall be given to the occupant or the occupant's representative at the conclusion of the inspection. Such report shall indicate the need for additional inspection by specialized inspector if necessary. If a written report is requested at the time of inspection, it shall be left with the person making the request. That's the section you're referring to, correct? 410.8.
Yes,
Point
yes, thank you.
822, section C.
Yes, thank you. So in the inspection report, I just want to go back to the smoke alarms.
Yep.
Would you mind just reading what was stated and then crossed out about smoke alarms?
Yep, no smoke or CO detectors observed, 410.482, or .482, and then acceptable remedies provide adequate smoke and CO.
And was it your testimony earlier, if I understood you correctly, that you wrote that because there wasn't a smoke alarm outside of the office on the first floor?
It's because I had seen one removed, and I didn't observe any other one of that style in the dwelling, and it was removed because after speaking with fire, again, they explained that the gray square boxes that you have are your smoke and your CO, and that the system that you have is a fairly new system.
They said
smoke
they
and
were
CO.
square boxes?
I believe so.
Okay. So did you see a smoke alarm or a CO detector in the garage?
I did not.
Okay. Did you observe one anywhere in the basement?
I did not.
Did you observe one on the second floor in the hallway?
I did not.
Okay. Did you observe a smoke alarm or a CO detector on the first floor anywhere?
I did not. But as I stated, I confirmed with fire that you did have them. And I am correct that they're not the circular ones, correct? Sorry, I'm not supposed to be asking a question. I take that back.
They are circular. They are circular. And I
They're
guess they are. They're like square with rounded edges.
Yeah.
So since you wrote this on the report initially, can we understand that you were looking for smoke alarms and CO detectors?
Yes, I wasn't going to be testing them, but I was looking to see if any jumped out at me. But
Okay.
that was to be left more up to fire. But again, as you're clearly very familiar with the sanitary code, everything falls under the housing code. Fire, plumbing, electrical, it all finds a home there too.
And because of that, you were looking for them while you were there?
Correct.
Okay.
And especially
Thank you.
because that is a more, if you want to say, critical violation, right? It's a condition deemed to endanger. So I tried to make sure that those items are covered.
Okay, thank you. So in this report, there's a section for referrals,
Yes.
and you have checked electrical, fire, plumbing, but not building or other. Can you tell us why you checked plumbing?
That was probably an error and meant to be building. Because you are correct,
Okay.
plumbing should not have been checked,
Okay.
but building should have been. And I probably should have checked other as well for zoning.
Okay, thank you. I like to move on to the electrical portion. Your report and the orders that you sent refer to overloaded outlets. Can you define overloaded outlet, or define as you meant it in the report?
As I meant it is, you have too much electrical, you have too many things plugged in for what an average dwelling should have, right? The number of heat lamps and lights and other electrical wiring that you have plugged into these strips is not common in a normal household, in a normal residential home, and would be concerned for fire and overloading your electrical panel. It's just, you don't see that in a residential property, that amount of electrical items, in particular heat lamps and heaters. They take a lot of electricity.
So if I understand you correctly, then, you stated that the outlets are overloaded because they had a number of appliances plugged into them above what is average for a residential home?
Correct, and they would require proper installation, and I have no records of any inspections being done by an electrical inspector that would approve that. Because that amount of work that would need to be done to have that amount of items plugged in to make it legal, you would need to have some sort of electrical inspection done to show that the work was done properly.
So if I understand you correctly, to plug items into an outlet requires an electrical permit?
I would say, a regular outlet like that, no. But the extent that you have, you're not seeing that in a regular residential home. That's commercial grade there.
So how many outlets need to have appliances plugged into them to require an electrical permit?
I can't give you a number, but any home that I go into that I see something like this, I'll be on the phone with my electrical inspector and have them come out to give me advice, because this isn't typical.
Okay. No, I'm fine. I believe it had been entered into the record, the March 10th report written by the electrical inspector.
Yes.
Can you just state for us where in this report it refers to illegal extension cords?
I view part of it as the number 3, the overloading there, and then,
Can you state what it says for us?
yes, I'll state it again. A qualified licensed electrician shall confirm that the connected load on each cord, set, multi-outlet strip is not exceeding its rating. And then electrical work performed without electrical permits.
Okay. Did you at any point, it can be before or after the inspection, did you at any point speak to any of the town's electrical inspectors about when a permit is required at a residence?
So, yes, and to be honest, I don't have a clear answer for you on that, but I do have this inspection report in front of me, and that's what I'm going off of, right? The electrical inspector found violations, and that's what I base my violations off of, is that he found similar violations.
So you stated that you did have a conversation with a town electrical inspector about when a electrical permit is required at a
Yes.
residence? Can you tell us what you were told?
So my understanding is certain work that's done in a residence, if the occupant does the work themselves, they don't necessarily need an electrical permit, but that in this case, permits had been pulled. So inspections are then required.
Okay, so, but you were informed that
Under certain conditions.
homeowners performing their own electrical work
That they
don't
can to
require an
cer- yep.
electrical permit? Okay. And I believe you stated that you were also informed that there were electrical permits pulled?
Correct.
Were you told who pulled the permits?
I was not.
Do you know if they were pulled by a licensed electrician?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if inspections were ever performed for those permits?
There have been no inspections done as far as I have been made aware. Other than, I guess I should take that back. There was, our electrical inspector went out, when was this first? April 2nd, 2021, and March, those were the order letters. He went out March 23rd, 2021, and February 10th, 2022. And my understanding from those inspections is that he could not conduct an inspection because everything had been closed up. and that he didn't have all the proper information that he needed.
Do you know what information that is that he needed?
I
and
think
didn't
from,
have?
it was from a licensed electrician, some information potentially, or some paperwork from you. I'm not exactly sure what all the missing documents are.
Okay. I wanna go back to- Did you want to take over for a minute?
Yeah, Town Council, if you don't mind, we'd like to kind of go back and forth, only because we were not told about the ground rules before this hearing, so in the interest of kind of moving this along.
If Madam Chair allows, so long as, again, you're limiting it to cross-examination.
That's fine.
Okay. You stated previously that there were cockroaches in the bins.
Correct.
How did you identify what insects were in the bins?
They were labeled.
And is it accurate to say that you believe that it says cockroaches on the bins?
No, it had the species, and to be honest, I can't remember the name of it at this time, but it is a species of cockroach.
So are you familiar with the environmental requirements of that specific species?
I am not. Like, do you mean like the heating and the care that's required for them?
Yes.
I am not.
If you're not familiar with what their climate requirements are, could you speak to how you believe that they would be a risk of infestation in the neighborhood?
If something were to happen, cockroaches can be pretty hardy. We're coming up on summer, right? You'd be surprised what animals can survive. I mean, even bearded dragons in a certain time of year, if something were to happen and they would get out, they could survive in New England. I understand they probably wouldn't survive the winter, but they could still survive. And they can become a nuisance to you, the occupants, right? I mean, if something happens, that's your dwelling as well, and that could become an infestation in your own home.
So just to confirm, you actually aren't aware what species of cockroach it is or what their specific environmental requirements would be? Is that accurate?
That is correct. I believe, I can't remember if Allison had written them in one of her notes. I do not have that written down in my notes.
You also said that the crickets were a risk of infestation. Am I understanding that correctly?
2 of the containers of crickets were uncovered. From my own personal experience with pets I've had, crickets can get out pretty easily. And in that volume, in any home, would be considered a nuisance.
Can you speak to what pets you're speaking about that you have that you require crickets?
So for a time, I did have a turtle.
So you've never had a bearded dragon?
I have not.
When you say that bearded dragons could survive outside in New England, could you speak to where you're getting that information?
I know they need warmth, and we can get very warm in the summer. I know it's not necessarily quite as dry as they need, but I think animals surprise us. If you look at, just around the world, right? You look at different animals that come from different parts of the world, and that can survive in surprising locations.
So what duration do you believe that it would be able to survive outside to constitute an infestation?
It depends on the time of year, but they also can carry illnesses. I believe that there was an article that one of you had been quoted in, right, that they carry salmonella. And so even if they get out, right, their feces, if those end up in the yard, if those somehow then get transported, there's wildlife out there that's
I'm
not
sorry,
just-
that wasn't actually my question. My question was actually how long you believe that they could survive outside, specifically on their own.
It depends on the time of year.
And you're just kind of guessing about that, or do you have like any specific information about that?
I do not. I cannot give you specific dates. I have not read specific studies on their survival rates.
And you've never cared for a bearded dragon,
I have not.
so would you say it's accurate that you're not actually familiar with what their requirements are to survive?
Correct.
As far as I'd like to circle back around to the power ratings of the items that were plugged in. Are you aware that there was a hearing at the Zoning Board of Appeals for this property regarding this?
I'm aware there was a
Situation.
hearing. I don't know too much other than that.
So in the hearing, it was discussed what the load of a lot of those appliances are. Is it accurate that you didn't actually ask the homeowners about what any of the loads were?
Correct.
Is it accurate that the electrical inspector, to the extent that you can speak to his inspection, didn't report on what the value of any of the loads were,
To me directly, is that what you're asking?
or in the report?
His report does not speak to it directly, and he did not report it to me directly.
So then would you say it's accurate to say that the statement that things are overloaded is actually an inference? That there's no actual data to suggest that the power rating on anything is exceeded because no one actually collected a power rating on any of the appliances in the home?
I don't know if the electrical inspector did or not, but yes, based on, it is an inference based on my inspections, the number of years that I've done inspections, that would be an overloaded system in a residence unless I have some sort of documentation from my electrical inspector that would say that would be appropriate.
Now, you talk about average. Can you speak to a specific number, or you just kind of go into a home and just kind of make a guess?
I have done hundreds of housing inspections, so I've seen hundreds of homes, and so I have a general idea of what normal is and what would be considered overloaded. And you're running a professional business out of that home that requires a lot of power and a lot of electricity with the number of bearded dragons, and that is overloading a normal residential panel. So if my electrical inspector told me they've pulled the permits, that all of that electrical is properly installed, is properly, has correct loading, I'd say, okay, perfect, not a violation. But my electrical inspector is telling me that he doesn't know whether that system is overloaded or not, that he has no documentation, and that he needs something showing him, and he needs to conduct an inspection. So until I have that, I can't say that the violation doesn't exist or that it's been corrected.
Okay. So you agree that you actually have no idea how much power the house uses, no idea what any of the electrical loads are, and that you observed a lot of things plugged in, and you believe that just simply a lot of things plugged in constitutes overloaded.
Correct.
Are you aware of what amperage service entrance the house has?
I do not.
Are you aware of any solar system that the house may or may not have?
Yes.
You mentioned wires hanging from the ceiling. And I believe in one of the exhibits there was depictions of that.
Yep, into the outlets in the ceiling.
Do you observe strain reliefs holding the wires that are
Yes.
plugged into the ceiling? Were you informed by the electrical inspector about any discussion about the requirement for strain reliefs?
No.
To the extent that you may be able to answer this, I understand you're not the electrical inspector, but unfortunately he's not with us. You stated that the panel was, or the permitted work was not inspected because it was, I believe your quote was, all closed up.
Correct.
Do you understand what the permit was for?
The original permit, I think it's listed in the initial order that the electrical, it was just the GFCI protection. Is that, well, that, I believe that's what it was. It was just for one portion, if I'm not incorrect. But I couldn't tell you exactly what the permit was for.
Ms. Starrett, the electrical devices, did you record any of the UL listings?
No.
Okay, so the multi-bank outlets, the extension cords, you said you observed, you don't have UL listings for any of those?
I do not.
Okay. You mentioned heat lamps. Did you record the UL listing for those?
I did not.
Did you record the electrical usage?
I did not.
Okay, so So you don't know how much power any of the individual lamps
Correct.
use? Okay. Do you know, are you aware of the capacity of any of the circuits that they're plugged into?
I'm not, but I'm sure they're high. I mean, you have some commercial grade electrical equipment in there and outlets. But again, like I said, I don't have anything that shows that proper permits or that it was installed correctly.
But you did state earlier that you are aware a permit is not needed.
For certain, my understanding is certain residential, like homeowners doing the work.
Are you aware of who did the work?
I am not.
Okay. You don't know who did any of the electrical work?
I do not.
Okay. The multi-bank outlet strips, can you tell us how many outlets there are? I don't know if this question may not make sense the way I'm wording it. Like, how many outlets are there in a strip?
On
that you
average, or
observed?
that I saw?
Just any of them that you saw at the house?
Oh, I'd have to go back to the pictures. I don't have that. I'd say close to 20.
Okay. And how many, in your opinion, need to have a device plugged into them for it to be overloaded?
If I saw something like that many in a residential, I would already be calling my electrical inspector. And if someone was using that to plug it in, because you don't, that's not residential equipment. That's what I don't normally see in a residence. So that would already trigger me to contact my electrical inspector for advice.
So how many of the 20 outlet plugs need to have a device plugged into them for you to consider it overloaded?
I couldn't give you a number. Every circumstance is different.
But you consider that to be overloaded?
That, in addition to everything else that was happening there, right? Those aren't the only outlets, those aren't the only plugs, but if I saw just that alone, I would still call my electrical inspector and ask him, even if I just saw that alone, but these aren't the only strips that you had in the garage.
So is it your opinion that the devices plugged into a strip like that could add up to a load that is within what the strip is rated for, but that you would consider it to be overloaded?
I would say it wouldn't be, it would be too much for a residential electrical panel, yeah.
So the same strip with the same devices plugged into it in a commercial property would not be overloaded, in your opinion?
I would probably check with the electrical inspector there too, but yeah, usually commercial is just constructed differently, especially depending on what kind of business is going into a commercial business. You just construct commercial different than you do residential.
But your testimony is that the same devices plugged into the same multi-bank outlet would not be considered overloaded on a commercial property. If it was just transported to a commercial property and plugged into a wall outlet there,
I'd probably
it
check
would
with my
not-
electrical inspector.
but it would not
there
be
as well.
considered overloaded.
I'd probably check with the electrical inspector to confirm, just like I did in this situation.
Okay. Did any of the breakers, well, let me back up. Do you know if the devices were on while you were there?
I would assume,
But you didn't check?
I mean, there are a lot of lights on and a lot of
Okay.
heat lamps working and on, tanning lights, so yeah, they were on.
Do the multi-bank outlet strips have a built-in circuit breaker?
I do not know, but I would assume.
Do they have one of those little
The on-off things.
switches, on-off switch?
I would assume, yeah, you can see it on one of the pictures.
Did any of them trip while you were there?
They did not.
Did any of the circuit breakers in the panels trip while you were there?
Not that I was aware of.
Okay. Was there ever a time where a bunch of lights just suddenly turned off without explanation?
Not that I saw.
Okay. Your report states, in part, so this is item number 2, in the garage and the basement, multiple extension cords and power strips were observed, continuing to overload the outlets. When you say multiple, can you tell us how many?
2 or more,
So there were just at least 2.
at least 2. I didn't count. I don't have a written number down, a tally.
So you don't know how many extension cords there were?
Correct. Multiple, it would mean 2 or more.
Okay. Is 2 enough to be considered overloading an outlet?
No, for extension cords, no.
So it would take more than 2 extension cords to be considered overloading?
Correct.
How many is required to be considered overloading?
As I've said, I can't give you an exact number. Every scenario is different.
So would it be fair to say that when you state here that the outlets are overloaded, it's just kind of a general feel?
Yeah, it's my observation.
But the observation is not based on a numerical value for what any of those circuits are able to support or are rated to support?
Correct, the housing inspections are my observations.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to, before I change topic, do you want to ask any questions about electrical?
Yeah, if that's all right, Town Council, I'd just like to follow up in the same thread.
Madam Chair?
Yes, that's fine.
Agent Sterrett, you stated repeatedly about commercial-grade equipment. Are you only speaking about the multi-taps that you observed, or was there other equipment that you would classify as commercial-grade?
A lot of the electrical did appear, or I should say some of the electrical did appear commercial. I mean, the whole facility, I mean, in a residential, you don't see the outlets really in the ceilings, right? I mean, the garage has been converted into a commercial space. That is clear.
So would it be accurate, in your opinion, that if a receptacle is installed in the ceiling, that should only occur on a commercial property?
Again, it depends on the situation. It's unusual to see it in a residential home. But again, if I saw something that looked like a business in a residential home when I was out doing an inspection, depending on what that was, I would defer to another department. We work as a team, and I know I'm not an expert in everything, and so I try to bring in people that know more on a certain subject matter. So I'd probably bring in zoning, I'd bring in building, I'd bring in electrical, potentially even fire, just like with this inspection.
Did you observe garage door openers while you were on the property?
I did not.
You didn't observe any garage door openers
Like the
inside the
button
garage?
to open it?
No, the physical device that opens the door.
Yes,
Did you observe where those get their power from or where they're plugged in?
I did not.
You didn't notice a receptacle nearby to it that it was plugged into?
I did not. Not that I specifically noted, at least.
Now, I'm
My
sorry,
report.
forgive me, Town Council, if this is kind of repeating the question from previously. The commercial-grade equipment, so you're saying that the only commercial-grade equipment you observed was the multi-taps, or was there something else? I'm sorry.
I would say the whole facility was pretty much set up commercially, but those, regarding to the electrical, you did have a lot of those multi-tabs.
No, so I'm just asking about, you said commercial-grade equipment. Equipment would be like physical devices, so what other
I also
commercial-
view the multi-tabs as equipment.
Yeah, so you're saying that the multi-taps are the commercial-grade equipment, is that what you're
That,
saying?
and I mean, your setup overall, right?
Well, so you're saying that you believe that in your words, setup is equipment?
Yes and no. So yes, in the sense that a lot of the equipment that you have set up, the tanks, the lights, a lot of that you see in a commercial area, commercial space.
So then if there was a tank in a property, that would constitute a commercial property?
When you have that many, yes,
Did you observe any tanks on the property?
I did.
Where did you observe tanks?
So in the basement, you have tanks for the turtles, and it depends on what you define as tanks. I include what you put the bearded dragons in as tanks.
So, okay, so you're using tank generically as the habitats for the
Yeah.
animals? So it sounds like the only commercial grade equipment that you're speaking about that I can really discern is like a discrete thing is the multi-taps.
The
Is that accurate?
multi-tabs, yeah.
And when you say commercial grade, you just simply mean that it happens to be used in a business setting? Is that accurate?
Right, you don't generally see those in a residential dwelling.
So if somebody was to purchase that equipment on, I don't know, maybe Amazon.com, they would need to have a business to use it or something, or?
Again, it depends on the situation. Every circumstance is different. Every house is different. Every home's use is different. So again, if I saw that in a residential property, I would contact the electrical inspector.
So do you feel that the standard that's applied is the same for all the different uses, whether it's commercial or industrial or residential?
I don't totally understand the question.
What I mean by that is that if it's overloaded in a residential setting, would it also, the same devices plugged into the same receptacle with the same capacity also be overloaded in a commercial setting and an industrial setting?
Potentially. Chances are lower because usually a commercial or industrial setting is constructed to have that electrical capacity. But again, if I'm uncertain, I defer to my electrical inspector.
Do you understand how a circuit breaker works?
Yes.
Do you think it's accurate to say that if you were to overload a circuit breaker, that is to exceed its rated capacity, that it would trip?
That's what it's designed for. You do have electrical fires, they don't always work, right?
I believe you stated previously that GFCI breakers were installed in the garage
I think
recently.
that was a permit might have been pulled for that. That was in the electrical inspector's first violation from April 2nd, 2021. He noted that.
So is it accurate to say that you don't believe that the GFCI breakers would provide protection from an electrical overload?
I don't know if they've been installed properly because I don't believe an inspection has been done.
You also stated that the electrical inspector had actually been in the property.
Yes, on these 2 dates to conduct his inspections.
Did the electrical inspector contact the electrician to perform an inspection?
I don't know.
So is it accurate to say that if inspections aren't performed, then even if they're requested, then, you know, it's just a violation regardless of whether or not it's safe? Is that an accurate assessment?
If my electrical inspector goes out and he says that these violations exist, the proper work hasn't been done, hasn't been properly inspected, then yes, it's a violation until he or she tells me that those items have been installed correctly, and there are no concerns on his or her end.
What if the electrical inspector refuses to perform the inspection?
Then I would honestly, I'd probably call the state community sanitation program and ask what their next recommendation would be. I have yet to come across that. I have worked in 3 communities now, and I've had no issues having the electrical inspector come out with me on inspections and give me advice and give their input.
Do you have any idea why the electrical inspector didn't perform the inspection when he was there? I believe you said documentation was missing, but these are GFCI breakers. This is not a complicated inspection to perform.
I don't know. I don't know if he was requested to have an inspection. I don't know if he could conduct an inspection, but he was out there with me on February 10th, 2022, and still found violations.
It doesn't sound like he found violations with regard to the breakers. It sounds like he didn't inspect them.
Is that a question? Again, this portion of the hearing is just for
I understand,
cross-examination.
Town Council. I understand. I'm trying to expedite it. Do you want to revisit anything?
Yeah, if you're finished.
Yeah.
Are you done? Okay. Regarding the wiring, did the wiring inspector provide any input into your report?
In the sense that I had a conversation with him about whether all those items that were plugged in, if that was acceptable, if that was to code, then yes, I had that conversation.
Did he provide any input in terms of what should be considered a violation?
I mean, other than the housing code only has a very few sections where electrical is covered, and I put 351 in there, which is the broadest, and that his violations would fall under that.
Did he provide input as to whether or not he felt that that violation was a violation?
My understanding with my conversation with him is that, yes, there hadn't been inspections done, and he couldn't state whether the work had been done to code and whether or not the system was overloaded or not.
When you perform inspections, do you consider anything to be a violation until it's proven to not be a violation?
Again, it depends on the circumstance. You'd need to be more specific.
Well, so, like, electricity, for example. If you go out to a property, I think that you had mentioned that this portion of the code is very general. If you perform an inspection at any residence, is the residence deemed by you to be in violation of this section of the code until proven to not be in violation of it?
No, unless there's something that jumps out at me as being an irregularity, or there's been work that we know has been done without a permit, and normally my inspections are occupants and not owner occupied. That's the most common, and unless they have a specific concern or complaint.
Okay. I wanted to move on to the number 4, the nuisance. We refer to a nuisance odor and insects as a nuisance. I think that you had mentioned earlier cockroaches in the bins. Do you recall, I don't know if it was in the photo, you said the bin was labeled as a species. Do you recall what the species was?
As I stated already, I did not write it down.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, is it shown in any of the photos?
I don't believe, where I say that. It is, is it the Debra? Is that what it, Dubra? Juba, it's Juba, right? I think it says it in one of the pictures.
I actually
On the
don't-
second page.
I don't actually have it in front of me. I actually can't read that, it's too smudged, but it says something. So I think that you stated, excuse me, that you did not look up any information about the species.
Correct.
Okay. Would you consider any insect that is a member of the roach family to be a nuisance?
Again, it depends on the scenario, but yes.
So
Some scenarios I probably wouldn't say that, but overall, if I'm seeing either any type of roach infestation, right? I mean, generally any type of insect infestation in a dwelling would be considered nuisance, or in this case, it's not an infestation, but the volume. Yes, I would consider a nuisance.
So just to clarify, did you find any evidence of an infestation?
No, which is why I did not cite that.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm confused. So what didn't you cite?
I did not cite from the housing code 410 550 extermination of insects, rodents, and skunks.
Okay, but you did cite from Mass
Mass
General
General
Law,
Law.
Chapter
Correct.
111, okay. Can you just explain to us why you feel that it does fit into Chapter 111, but not the housing code that you just referred to?
The housing code, it's more when there is an infestation in the home and someone's complaining about it. And this doesn't really fall under that. I cite it as a nuisance because there was an odor which comes from the reptiles, and insects can give off the odors as well. And because it is in a residential area, if anything were to happen, that's a large volume of insects that you have that are now loose in a residential, insects and reptiles. Both of which can carry illnesses.
Can you define nuisance for us?
Nuisance is really broad. Unfortunately, in some ways, it's very broad. But I view it as anything that could cause, I mean, you have the definition here, that could cause sickness within its town, could be injurious to the public health, sources of filth. And so because of the volume and it being in a residential neighborhood, I feel it fits under that category.
But can you define a nuisance? Like, under the law, what is the definition of a nuisance?
I feel like I just stated it. It's something that can cause harm to the public health.
So are you saying that something can be a nuisance but is not causing harm? It only has to have the potential to cause harm?
It can be both. And in this case, you are also the public, right? And this is in your residence. And this can impact your health as well, as your commercial business is in the same space as where you're eating and sleeping. And then that can also spread. There's various aspects that you could look at it. But yes, this has the potential, in my opinion, to be injurious to the public health should anything happen, but it can also impact your health.
Were there insects in the bedrooms?
There were not.
Were there insects in the kitchen?
There were not.
Were there reptiles in either of those locations?
Reptiles, no.
Can you explain what you meant when you said that they are where we are eating and sleeping?
That they're in the same building, right? So there's that not that separation, and they do carry illness.
Has there been a complaint made about insects?
About insects specifically, it might have been in that initial complaint that the town was involved with to begin with.
Do you have a copy of that?
I don't know if we have a copy of that here. Did you bring it? No. I do not have a copy of that.
Has there been a complaint by any party claiming that a nuisance at our property has caused them injury?
No.
Has there been a complaint that any condition at our property has infringed on their rights as another party?
No, we have not received any complaints.
Do you consider those conditions to be necessary for a condition to be considered a nuisance?
We received an initial complaint, which triggered an inspection, and so I view that as receiving a complaint.
That didn't really answer the question.
So I did receive a complaint, so then, yes, I view it as a nuisance.
So the question was, in your opinion, can something be a nuisance if it is not causing injury or infringing on the rights of a party? Can it be legally a nuisance without that condition?
Yes, and the reason I think of some of the nuisances that we generally cite is in a property where there's a lot of items in the backyard, right, like junk, debris, that might not have hurt anybody yet, but it could cause that. And sometimes usually we receive a complaint, just like we received a complaint in this case, and then I would cite that as a nuisance as well.
In those cases, was the complainant someone who lived in that area or a neighbor or lived on the property?
It depends. We get you'd be surprised where we get complaints from. It can be from a neighbor, it can be from a friend of a neighbor, it can be someone driving by, it can be, people sometimes have disputes and they submit a complaint.
Is that enough for the condition to be a nuisance?
No, we'd have to go out. Like every complaint that I receive, I go out and I inspect it.
Okay. Did you observe a smell on the outside of the building?
As you're walking in, yes, so at the doorway outside, but not from the street.
So in the doorway, but not while you're outside the building?
Correct, not from the street.
Okay. Are you aware of any of the statements that Allison Novak made during the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing?
I am not.
How about Robert Lanciani? Are you aware of any statements that he made during that hearing?
I'm not. I've
Okay.
not seen that hearing.
Were you ever informed prior to receiving our appeal that brought us here today of those parties retracting their statements of a nuisance odor at the property?
I was not.
Are you aware of any other party other than Allison Novak and Robert Lanciani claiming that there has ever been a nuisance at the property?
Those are the only two departments that I think that would normally cite that, so no.
Well, when I say a claim of a nuisance, that could be a private person, a neighbor, for example, saying they are nuisanced.
So no, like I said, the only complaint that we've received was that initial complaint.
Okay, so the neighbors to the property have not complained then, that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Town Council, at this time, I don't know that we have any further questions for Rika Sterrett. However, the electrical inspector, his report was cited extensively, and we believe, with the permission of the chair, that a continuance with the electrical inspector would be appropriate so that we can question him on his report that was extensively cited at this hearing.
So you can make that request, but not at this time. At this time, if you're done with your questioning, we will move on to the next portion. And then if the chair does want to entertain that request, she certainly may.
You're saying we have to close the public hearing first? Could you provide some clarity, what exactly you mean?
No, so are you done with your questioning?
We're done with questioning, but obviously
Okay.
we would want to
So-
provide testimony as well.
Sure, so you will have an opportunity also to provide testimony. The hearing will still continue. Before the board does go to close the public hearing, you can make that request. However, at this point, we are not about to do that, and so the hearing will continue unless Madam Chair feels otherwise, because the board also will have an opportunity to ask questions. You'll have an opportunity to testify. The board could ask you questions, and then before the board goes into deliberation, if you'd like to make that request, you could do so then, but it's not proper at this time.
Thank you, I understand. Okay. We don't have any further questions for Agent Rika Sterrett.
Thank you. Do you want to move the laptop back this
Oh,
way,
yeah.
in case the board has any questions?
Yes. Thanks, Shane.
He's probably not going to be able to hear our answers, though, if it's over there.
Uh,
I can try in the middle.
Sure. why not?
We'll
Thank
try
you.
to speak up.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, at this time, if the board members have any questions, you can ask them about the testimony that you've just heard. We will have an opportunity for the property owners to testify, and they can be questioned afterwards, but at this time, if we could limit questions just to the director.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Rika Sterrett, the director?
So I think some of the questions have already been answered, but just to reconfirm. So at this point in time, the electrical inspector has not done an official reinspection of the property.
Correct. Other than the one that he did on February 10th, which he's.
On March 10th?
February 10th, 2022, and then the March 10th order letter came from that inspection.
Okay. And on that letter, on Exhibit 6, which is from the electrical inspector, it states that an electrical permit EP 21105 was issued on April 28th to install the GFIC protection on garage receptacles. Is that the permit in question that has not received the reinspection?
Correct. My understanding is that's the only permit that has been pulled.
Okay, and it was specifically for the GFIC protection on the garage receptacles?
Yes.
Okay. And based on the site evaluation on there, just for clarification, it does say that ground fault circuit interrupter and arc fault circuit interrupter circuit breakers were installed but not tested during the site evaluation, so they could not confirm if they were protected.
Correct.
So that's not a formal reinspection of the permit.
Correct.
What is involved with the reinspection for that specific permit? What would need to be done for a reinspection?
So the electrical inspector could speak better to that, but as you see in that letter, it also says that the sheetrock would need to be removed to expose the wiring. That was completed without a permit.
Okay. All right.
So I would assume it need to be tested and potentially some wiring exposed.
Okay. So, in your experience with this, they could not confirm that they are protected because the sheetrock is up at that time?
Correct.
Okay. And in order to officially sign that off as for that permit, the sheetrock would have to be removed for a thorough inspection?
That's been my understanding, to show all the electrical work that's been done.
Okay. All right. In the images for, let me see if I can.
While you look for that, can I-
Yep, go ahead.
And regarding the electrical inspection, what steps by the homeowner would need to take place in order for that to happen?
They would need to schedule an inspection with the electrical inspector, and he would guide them through what they would need to do for him to be able to properly see what he needs to see.
Okay.
And was that contact ever made based on the records that we have, from the electrical inspector to the homeowner for reinspection?
Not that I've been made aware of.
Okay, but it could have been if we had the electrical inspector here to confirm.
Correct.
Okay.
My understanding is that there has not been, but correct, he could speak
He
to that
could
more.
speak to that more, okay. All right, do you have any other questions around I'm just trying to, so that would be number 2 in the findings, so that's the electrical. No. Okay. All right. On violation number 1, so the front entryway that was adjacent, the image that is there, and I believe in Exhibit 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Image number 9. Gonna label the numbers. Image number 9, which is the same image that is found on the actual violation number 1 that was dated on March 2nd. So this was a small section of the wall that was opening, and clearly in this image here, there are some wires showing. So this has not been closed due to a order to not.
Correct, the building issued a cease and desist order.
Okay.
As the building department also needs to conduct inspections, and they need the walls to be opened up again to properly conduct their inspections for all the work that was done.
Okay.
So I spoke with the building commissioner, and the owners are correct that at this time, by building's requirements, they cannot close this up.
Okay. And when was that cease and desist, whatever order? When was that sent to the homeowners?
It was, I believe, in March 2021. Let me just make sure that there was nothing else. April 2021, letters were sent to the occupants to cease and desist.
Okay. And do we have any communication from the occupants with regards to the cease and desist order that was sent from building?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, I believe they have appealed all of the letters
Okay.
that were sent, and I believe that is the only.
All right. Do you have any questions about violation number 1?
So regarding the cease and desist on leaving this work open and also satisfying closure and repair of the wall, for our purposes, what steps do the homeowners have to take next?
They would need to contact the building department and schedule an inspection with the building department.
Thank you.
And to this day, do we have anything, to your knowledge, from building that we've received any communication about a reinspection?
No.
Okay. All right, do you have any more questions about number 1? Okay, and then in terms of number 4, which is the nuisance, which is Mass General Law, Chapter 111. So at this time, we only have 1 complaint on file, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the complaint that we have on file is that from anybody that lives in the vicinity of the property in question?
No.
Or any abutters?
No.
No. And we've received no other complaints to this date?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was an odor upon coming up to the door, but not from the street side?
Correct.
And about how many of the containers with the insects were uncovered?
There were only a couple, and they were only the crickets. I'm gonna say like 2 to 4. I think it was these 4 in the second to last picture.
All right. And from what you saw on the property, all other containers were properly covered?
Correct, they all had covers on them.
Okay. And from your, from what you saw, those that were covered, would there be a high risk for the insects to escape from the habitats that they are in, from the enclosed containers?
At that time, it was only the crickets, but again, it depends on how they handle them. I just saw them secured with their lamps.
Okay.
Do you have questions around number 4?
I do not.
No?
Okay. Dave, can you hear us? You might be muted, Dave.
Can you hear us?
No.
He's-
Oh,
Dave, you're muted?
Dave, you're muted. I can,
Yeah, there we go.
there you go. Dave, do you have any questions with regards to any of the orders for Rika?
I just want to clarify, the insects were all live?
yes.
Okay. No, I don't have any further questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dave. Do you have any additional questions?
Can I circle back to number 3?
Yeah.
Regarding the secondary egress in the basement that was partially blocked by bins, have we received any updates on this?
That's been corrected. There, in your packet, there should have
Okay.
been a picture that was provided to us.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions for Rika?
No.
Okay, we're all set with Rika.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at this time, if the property owners would like to testify, again, I'd ask that you speak one at a time, state your name and address just for the record before you do testify.
At this time, we'd like to entertain questions from the board members if they have any for us.
Is that okay?
It is up to the property owners whether or not they'd like to testify. If they don't, Madam Chair, the board may ask questions.
Okay. Do you have any questions for the homeowners? Dina?
Just a general one. What do you see happening for us to amicably resolve I guess there's the 3 issues at hand since the 4th one, number 3, got corrected?
Well, the issue is, in my opinion, we struggle for the town side to get to yes. So we were ordered to hire an electrician to install GFCI and arc fault breakers. We did so at great expense over Easter weekend last year, right after these orders. And to this day, our electrician called, requested an inspection, and was told that no inspection would be provided because all of the walls had not been opened. Underneath the walls are the homeowner-installed electrical wiring that, as has been testified to, the homeowner is allowed to install. And, it would alleviate a lot of the perceived safety violations if he would just simply press the buttons on the GFCI breakers and test those breakers, but he wouldn't arrange with our electrician to perform an inspection of any of the work. Similarly, we were told that no inspection of any of the wiring would even be conducted until the entire garage was empty of everything. So it makes it kind of difficult to try and arrange for inspections of things amicably if kind of the starting point is that we have to remove all of our animals from the property to then have the consideration of possibly someday in the future there being an inspection.
I'd kind of like to answer the question too, but I'll let you finish first.
I'm finished if you'd like to continue.
Okay. Well, so first, I would like to just address that obviously there's kind of been overlap in the discussion between the electrical permit there's different departments involved. So the electrical the electrical order dated March 10th, I just wanted to point out, has also been appealed, and that goes to a state board of electricians. So, it's going to be dealt with by them. So as far as, let me think, count 1, we didn't really appeal that so much. Count 2, the extension cords, power strips, overloaded outlets. for overloaded outlets, I'm hearing a lot of, I'll just say non-numerical answers. The devices are rated for a specific load, and they either are exceeding it or they're not. And I'm a civil engineer. He builds lasers at IPG. We know what electricity is. And the work that was done in the garage, the electrical work, I did it. I was aware that I didn't need an electrical permit at the time. In 2019, I spoke to Robert Lanciani and Al Banfield about it, and Al Banfield confirmed that I did not need an electrical permit, and he refused to come do an inspection. And that's part of the basis of our appeal for that order. He had the opportunity to come do an inspection, and he didn't want to for whatever reason. And it is not reasonable or allowed under the electrical code to now, years later, demand that we rip everything out when he had his opportunity. Sorry, I'm just trying to go through each
That's
of the
okay.
individual things.
Can I ask a follow-up question there?
Sure.
So when were you informed that a permit was not required if you indeed a permit was pulled?
Well, that's a good question. So the permit that was pulled after the March 23rd, 2021 inspection. So at that point, everything, all of the electrical work in the garage, all the outlets, the wiring, that was all already there. It was all done by me. The only thing that changed in terms of hardwire, electricity in the walls, not just something plugged into an outlet, was the breakers were taken out and replaced with the GFCI arc fault breakers, and that was done by the electrician.
So that
I'm
was.
sorry, could you repeat the question?
So that was done by the electrician, and was
Yes.
it the electrician that pulled out that permit?
Yes.
Okay, so the electrician, just to make sure that we're doubling back here, so the electrician did the work for the breakers,
Yes, he
correct?
put in the arc fault
Pulled out the
breakers.
permit on April 28th of 2021, and he performed the work.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so therefore, if the permit was pulled, then my assumption would be that an inspection should be done if it was done by a licensed electrician.
He requested an inspection and was
Okay.
told that it wasn't going to be done.
Do we have communication between the electrician and the electrical inspector stating this information?
We have it from the electrician. He told us verbally. We didn't get it, we didn't obtain that in writing.
So it was verbal communication, nothing in writing?
Yes,
that they were not gonna
he told us
come
he
do it.
called the building official and was told that there would not be an inspection.
Okay.
All right, do you have any other questions?
Hold on, I do have some additional questions just around the nuisance.
I just wanted to go back to your first question, 'cause I don't know that I really finished answering that one. So the first question was, something along the lines of what could we do to just end this amicably? Count 3, we dealt with that. That wasn't appealed. Count 4, again, like conditions inside a single-family home is just not a nuisance. It doesn't meet the legal definition of a nuisance. It doesn't come remotely close to meeting that definition. I just think that really just needs to be dismissed because, the neighbors haven't complained. Our neighbors, actually, we have a good relationship with them. So
Okay.
I would ask that count 4 be dismissed and count 1 be dismissed. And even if you had any, if you have any concerns left open about count 1, feel free to ask. I'm sorry, count 2, the electrical components. Feel free to ask, but again, it really is just kind of a generalized referral back to the electrician's order, which, in my opinion, does not contain any violations. It contains, some observations that really don't amount to a violation or a safety hazard, and is also being appealed, partly for that reason.
Okay. So my other question around the nuisance complaint, or the nuisance violation that's in here. So with the opened containers of insects that were found on the inspection, have those since been dealt with? Do you have covers on them? How are you protecting to ensure that these insects are not going outside of your property?
Well, they are covered. I believe there were 2 cricket bins that were uncovered because they were in use. I mean, we obviously have to uncover them to feed the animals.
Correct.
If they got out of these are not infesting insects. They are they are shipped all over the country for insect sellers they are licensed to do that by APHIS, which is a division of the Department of Agriculture. So they wouldn't license them to ship all over the country insects that would actually be a hazard. Even if some crickets got out of the bin, they're still just going to be in the garage. They're not going to, I don't know what other people are imagining, but it's not like the town is going to be overrun with crickets. The dubia roaches also, these are not what you would picture as an insect that would infest your home. If you've seen hissing cockroaches, they're more similar to that. They're native to Argentina. Even in their native habitat, they're typically not found indoors. And their bins have heat lamps because they need it to be pretty warm to reproduce. If they got out, even during most of the year, they would maybe survive, but they're not going to thrive or reproduce. They are not good at finding food and water for themselves indoors, and they to even breed slowly, they need it to be well into the 70s. They prefer it really to be into like the upper 80s to be able to get to that temperature at least some of the time in order to reproduce. And they're not fast reproducers either.
Okay. Okay, I just want to, just to follow up on that piece, I just want to ensure that what was found in the inspection with the uncovered containers, I want to make sure that that was addressed and that they're not uncovered all of the time, which it doesn't sound like they are, only when they're being handled. And part of that is so that we do protect, the public health and safety in the event that any of these insects do get out. And there are questions, right? So this is why we do what we do, so.
And then I would just like to add to that from the original report, the April 2nd, 2021 report, so the only reference to insects in that report was from the sanitary code. It wasn't chapter 111. Okay. And, the state sanitary code refers to infestations. Mm-hmm. Insects bred in a domesticated captive environment is not an infestation. And we agreed to cover the bins just kind of in an effort to be cooperative. Legally, we didn't have to. So I believe that we have done a lot to try to be cooperative with town agents who have not shown the same regard in return.
Okay.
If I may, Chair, I'd just like to point out that it was noted that there's a lot of insects, but that they're all confined to the garage. If these were, and it's been noted previously that we've had these dragons at this property for years. And in this entire tour, repeated inspections going through the entire home. No one has ever noted an insect outside of the garage. And so I would ask that you ask yourself, if these were really infesting insects, how would that be possible? How could we possibly have maintained? The first inspection was a surprise inspection, where we had no notice. They just showed up at our door at 5 p.m. with a warrant to inspect our home. And they went through our entire home, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, everything. And yet not a single insect was found or noted. And I would ask that you consider that if this was a real risk of infestation, how on earth we could possibly accomplish that.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
No, good. Dave, do you have any questions?
I guess I'm trying to understand how the open wall and the wiring there is in any way related to the permit for the outlet in the garage.
Could you explain that just on number 1?
Is it related, or is it just something that came up during the inspection?
I understood those two to be sort of
Separate.
yeah.
They're separate violations, correct?
Yeah, yes, they're separate violations.
Okay.
All right.
So I can speak to that a little if you'd like me to.
I think we're all set with that now. Thank
Okay.
you. Dave, do you have any additional questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're all set.
And just for the record, can you both state your names and addresses? I know we know who you are, but this is being recorded. The minutes have to be recorded. So if you could just each state your name and your
Okay.
address.
Casey Fleming, and obviously 59 Cobog Avenue.
Robert King, 59 Quabog Avenue.
Thank
I
you.
guess I have one additional question.
Is he allowed to ask that right now?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
Is the garage where the animal, I assume the animals and the insects are kept in the garage?
Yes, they are.
Is that correct? Okay. Has the garage in any way been sealed to prevent the insects from escaping in the event that they were to get out?
Yeah, no, I'll answer that. So yes. I mean, given that we keep reptiles in there, we use a lot of heat. So the ambient temperature in the garage in the wintertime is, it gets up into the 80s. It's
Yeah,
much
I'm
warmer.
not concerned about the reptiles, really. I'm concerned more about the insects.
Well, no, my point is, yes, it's very tight. It's a lot of insulation, good windows, a door that seals well. So, just to kind of put in perspective, yes, it's sealed very well.
No special measures have been taken.
There's a
to seal
door.
against insects, because the insect will get into the walls and things like that. I mean,
Dave, to answer your question, there's a door that separates the garage from the rest of the house.
yeah, all garages have that door. My question is, have any special measures been taken to contain the insects in the event that they get out in that area?
It hasn't proved to be
Or is it just
necessary.
Get anybody else in the garage?
Why, I guess I'm not really understanding what you're looking for. I mean, so the insects are in bins, containers. If they got out of that, they're in a garage that, has a door that seals it. I don't really know what you could use to seal off a space other than a door. So maybe I'm not understanding the question.
Holly, I think you've answered it. So it's just a regular garage, like anybody's garage. So, okay. I think the need's been answered.
Okay. Right. I think all of our questions have been answered.
Madam Chair, if this, at this time, if you'd like, you can ask if the public would like to comment. That's up to you and
One
your
more question.
discretion.
How long has the business been operating?
We bought this property in 2018, and we've been located there for that amount of time, but the business has been operational since 2015.
Since when? I'm sorry.
So the business has been in operation since 2015, but it's been at this property since 2018.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So we can at this time?
If you'd like for members of the public to
Would you
comment,
like?
if you'd like.
No? No. Okay. I think we're all set.
I do understand.
Sorry, I can't hear.
No, sorry, Dave. We were just moving on to the next piece.
So,
Okay.
Can he move over here
Okay.
so that he can hear us? Sorry. We're like talking to a computer like it's a person. Sorry.
Thanks, Shane.
Thanks. We were just stating that at this time, we don't feel the need to gather any additional information from the public that's here. I think we have what we need. Okay.
Madam Chair, I do believe that there is a request that the property owners would like to make about a continuance, if you'd like them to make that request at this time.
Sure.
I guess maybe we can ask you, does the board feel that we should hear from Al Banfill? I mean, that his report has been mentioned extensively, but as I said, it is being appealed separately, so maybe the board could make a decision as to how you want to treat that.
Okay, so at this point, you are, I think there has been a lot of discussion around the electrical inspection itself, and we have had lots of questions around that. So just for us to understand that, what exactly are you asking of us as the board? Just so that we have all of our information so that we can appropriately discuss this.
Well, I think that answered it. It sounds like you would like some clarification on that. Would you like to hear from Al
Well, it's
Banfill?
something that we're going to discuss as a board, but I want to hear from you. So is that something that you want us to consider?
It's up to you.
Yeah, so what Casey Fleming was trying to point out is that we're appealing the electrical orders separately. And so we weren't sure if the board wants to make a judgment based on the electrical report, if the electrical report itself is under an appeal, or if the board would prefer to wait for a ruling from the state electrical board about those, or if the board just wants to accept testimony from Al Banfill without any ruling on that appeal.
So when do we discuss?
So, Madam Chair, through you, so if the board would like, you can consider whether or not you'd like to continue the public hearing, either to wait to follow up on the appeal that the property owners have claimed that they've filed with respect to the wiring inspector's order, or if you'd like to continue to have the wiring inspector present to testify and give evidence before the board. If you feel that that would be appropriate, then you can certainly continue the hearing. That is up to the board in its discretion. If the board feels that you've heard all of the evidence, then in my opinion, you can close the evidentiary portion of the hearing and begin your deliberations.
Okay. So I guess, Dina, Dave, what are your thoughts and opinions on that with regards to hearing additional information from the electrical inspector?
I don't see how we can render a decision without information from the electrical inspector or a resolution of the appeal of the electrical order.
Okay.
Well, right, and it sounds like there's, the walls have been closed and there have been some stipulations on getting that inspection done. So it's hard to say where we go without that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think that there's been way too many questions with regards to what the electrical inspector has found, and questions with regards to re-inspections of properties based on permitting, et cetera, that it's hard for us to really make any sound decisions around that without them available. So,
So we can continue the hearing?
yep,
Is there a motion to continue?
yep. So I will.
Excuse me, if I could just jump
So-
in with one thing before you continue,
If Madam Chair has to allow that.
what I'm asking.
So, we're just, hold on one second. Do you want to allow it? Dave, would you allow another comment at this time?
Yes.
Okay,
I would.
go ahead.
The complaint that was mentioned, do you recall the complaint that you had mentioned, that email that that contractor had made? I would just request that we be provided with a copy of that.
Okay.
I understand you don't have it tonight, but if the board would just provide us with a copy of that, I would
Sure.
appreciate it.
Can I just
Thank
ask
you.
a
Sorry, a
quick
copy
question?
of what?
The original complaint, Dave.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question
Yes,
to that,
you may.
Madam Chair? How, would you like it mailed to you? Would you like it emailed to you? What is your preference?
The email will be fine.
Okay.
You could email it to our attorney, that's fine.
Perfect,
Just
thank you.
anything, thank you.
Okay.
You want to make a motion to continue?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing regarding 59 Quabog Ave to include testimony and the presence of the electrical inspector for Oxford, Mr. Banfield?
Banfield.
Banfield.
I'll second that. Any additional discussion?
No.
Nope. Then I'll call for the vote.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, it has to be a roll call vote.
A roll call vote, okay. So roll call vote, Dave?
I, Dave Escobar, vote yes.
Dina Costa, board member, yes.
Carrie Singer, chair, yes.
And Madam Chair, the hearing has to be continued to a date and time certain.
Okay. So do we know when the electrical inspector is going to be available? That is going to be
I
our
don't-
question.
I don't believe evenings work for him.
Okay. So,
Can we put a date on the table and reschedule?
and then if it needs to be, we can check on the availability of the electrical inspector. So if we put a date down now that at least 2 members of the board can be available during a daytime.
You can do that. You'd have to actually have the hearing on that day, and if you need to continue again, you'd have to continue the hearing then.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
ask one question? Do we know the date of the electrical hearing in front of the state?
As far as I know, it has not been scheduled yet.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if you can do this, but, I mean, if you guys want to work out a date and then just tell us what it is, that's fine with me. I don't know if you have to set it now.
Under the open meeting law, you would, Madam Chair, unless you renotice.
Okay, so if we, let's just set a date that at least 2 of us, and you could be available during a daytime and then we'll check in with the electrical inspector, and then we'll take whatever next steps we need to go from there. Sorry.
Can we just say a date to be mutually agreed?
No, we have to set a date, Dave. It's okay, we'll,
Why don't we say
so-
1 week from today? And
so-
if it has to change, we'll change it.
yeah, days are hard for you, right, Dave? Because you're working
What's that?
you're working during the daytime, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's good.
Daytime would be difficult.
All right, so let's at least see when Dina and I are available, so then that's at least 2 of us, and we have quorum. What's your schedule looking like?
I have the 12th through the 15th open during the day.
Okay. Okay, I can do. Just not that Monday, the 11th.
Yeah, me neither.
But I can do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday during the day.
Thursday would be better. for us.
Thursday?
Yeah, I
Okay.
have less on the schedule.
That's fine, 14th? Yep. So what time?
Do we want to do, I was gonna say, do we want to do it over lunch? I know that, I don't know about those that are requesting the hearing, what time during the day generally works for them?
Yep.
Yeah, lunch would be good.
Okay, so if we did April 14th at 12 PM,
Wait, you wanted to?
would that work? That works.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what day of the week is that?
It's a Thursday,
Yes, that should be fine.
okay?
And Madam Chair, if I just might
Yep.
make a comment, and legal counsel, please correct me if this statement is wrong. But if I find out that the electrical inspector is unable to make it, the board will continue it, but I will notify you so that you don't necessarily need to waste your lunch break.
We would appreciate that, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we have continuance of this public hearing with presence of electrical inspector on April 14th at 12 PM. Location will be determined. Is that okay?
You should determine the location.
So
today.
we'll say town hall would be, we should be fine at that point.
Does that work for you?
It'll work.
Okay.
Okay.
Make it work.
All right. So, are we good here
Yes.
with that? Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, so we close the public hearing now?
No, so you've continued it, so
Yep.
you wouldn't close the.
Oh,
public
okay, so
hearing.
we just leave it, so we're
Yeah, so
good.
you could move on to the next year.
Next agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, both of you, and we'll see you on April 14th. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, does the board need to stay for anything that you have on the agenda today?
Nope, I think we're good. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
I'll
you.
send an email to you tonight when I get home.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Did you need anything? Okay.
Okay.
They should be made part of the meeting minutes.
Yes, Shane has their names and stuff.
The exhibits are part of the meeting minutes.
All right. So next on the agenda, Dave, we're just gonna move on to the agenda. There's just a few things left on there, if I can find
We'll
my,
make it quick.
if I can find my papers, hold on. Oh goodness, where's my agenda? Oh, it's right here. Okay, next are the, on the agenda is the minutes from our, March 7th of 2022 meeting. Did you guys have an opportunity to review those minutes as written?
I did.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes as written, for March 7th of 2022.
I make the motion as stated.
Dave Escobar, Vice Chair, I make the motion as stated.
And you'll second it. Okay. Any discussion?
No.
No.
Oh, there we go. All right, so then I'll call for, I'll do a roll call vote.
Dina Costa, member, yes.
Carrie Singer, chair, yes.
Dave Escobar, Vice Chair, yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, minutes approved for March 7th, 2022. All right, we have a variance request for a perk test extension for 110-114 Dana Road. That was submitted by Zachary Glass.
Yes, so it's 2 addresses. It's 110 Dana and 114 Dana, but it's the same request.
Okay.
So the perk testing was done in 2010, and our regulations state you could request extension to that data. However, a perk test data is only good for 2 years, and you have to request that extension within the 2 years. So they would have had to request it before September 22nd, 2012. However, so those are our local regulations. The state Title V regulations say that if perk test is conducted after 1995 and the soil is untouched, so say, and that hasn't been disturbed. That's what I'm looking for. You can continue to use the data. However, our regulations don't state that, so they're requesting a variance from our local regulations to allow the perk data from 2010 to be used. Steve Donatelli did go out. The land has been undisturbed, and in both of our opinions, it's best practice to extend the perk data because you don't want to be digging too many holes in a place where your system's going to go, because that can negatively impact the system as well.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Any questions, Dave, for Rika on that?
No.
Okay.
So my one comment / question is, I'm gonna have them fill out, if the board approves this, I will have them fill out an official permit
Okay.
extension request per our
Okay.
regulations.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve a perk test extension request for 110 and 114 Dana Road that was submitted by Zachary Glass, Existing Grade, Inc.
I make the motion as stated.
A second.
Okay, and any discussion?
No.
No.
No, okay, with there being none, roll call vote.
Yes, Dina Costa, member.
Dave Escobar, Vice Chair, yes.
Carrie Singer, Chair, yes. Perk test extension approved. All right, let's see, next on our agenda, we have a permit fee exemption request for Clara Barton Camp food permit application.
And if, this can also be tabled to next agenda item, but normally as a nonprofit, they pay a food permit fee, the nonprofit food permit fee, they're asking to waive it as a nonprofit.
Have we waived it in the past?
I don't know, but when we voted on fees, it was stated that nonprofits could ask to have their fees waived.
Oh, okay.
Our policy has been if they ask for it, we waive it.
Yeah, I just don't
We're
ever
not-
remember doing it for them in the past, so, okay. All right, good. All right, so I will entertain a motion to exempt the food permit application fee for Clara Barton Camp as submitted.
I make the motion as stated.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Nope. With there being none, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Yes, Dina Costa, member.
Yes, Dave Escobar, Vice Chair.
Yes, Carrie Singer, Chair. All right. Last on our agenda, well, a couple things, but discussion or update on COVID.
So I'll make this real brief. COVID numbers still looking great. In my weekly emails out to the board, I continue to include Kathleen's data. We also, our shared service EPI, she has also been creating vaccination graph data that I'll continue to share. She creates it weekly. We're now having our wastewater tested, Blackstone Valley wastewater. Unfortunately, just like Boston, we're starting to see those numbers go up again. So there's concern that this is going to bring another wave. We haven't seen that in positive tests, but the more people have home test kits, we're not seeing as many positives within Maven when we could still be having positives. They're just unrecorded.
Okay.
So that's kind of the brief update, and I'll continue to send my weekly Friday updates. And if the board would like to see anything specific on those, just let me know.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Permit reviews and correspondence.
So we have 2 letters of correspondence. So per the plumbing code, anybody that requests a variance from the plumbing board has to submit a letter notifying the Board of Health that they're doing this. So this is just notification that 8 Ballard Street, Oxford, and 11 Shady Lane, Oxford, are requesting variances to the plumbing code. So no action is needed, they just have to provide documentation that they have notified the board.
Okay, so we don't need to do anything with this? It's
Correct.
just the notification?
And then these
Okay.
are more permits that need to be signed.
I need to stop by next week and sign those, or are they good enough, 2 signatures?
I think they're good with 2 signatures. We're good. There was only a handful of them, Dave.
Okay.
So,
Just don't miss the July and August meetings, because that's when we'll have a bunch from food.
oh yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. All right. Great. Permit signed. All right. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Health meeting for April 6, 2022 at 8:20 p.m.
I make the motion as stated.
I second the motion.
Any discussion?
Nope.
No.
Nope, but there being none, roll call vote.
Dina Costa, member, yes?
Dave Escobar, Vice Chair. Yes.
Carrie Sager, chair, yes. Meeting adjourned.